Six-time world champion, martial arts instructor, action star in movies and television, an all-around good man. It is the incomparable Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris was born with his beard. Scratch that. Born Carlos Ray Norris, March 1940, in Ryan, Oklahoma. He would join the Air Force and get his nickname Chuck.
I joined when I went in the military, and I'm in boot camp, and the Hispanic guy says, "You know what the name Carlos means in English?" I said, "Yeah, it's Charles." He says, "Yeah, and the nickname for Charles is Chuck, and I'm going to call you Chuck." And for some reason, it stuck with me.
Stationed at Osan Air Base, South Korea, he was a military air policeman for the United States Air Force, and it's where he would learn Tung Sado and get his black belt while stationed there. Returning to the United States, living in California, he would begin to compete, and soon would become the U.S. champion and then the world champion. He would go on to win that world middleweight title 6 years in a row, finally retiring in 1975. You can see in this competition footage, this was considered the blood and guts of the golden era of the American point fighting system, where it was no pads. They did sometimes try to pull the technique, but as you can see there, it didn't always happen, as the poor opponent here falls to the ground from Norris's roundhouse kick. Chuck Norris had 3 epic battles in the point fighting system against Joe Louis, the 2 perennial martial artists of the time in the competition era. Norris would go on to win 2 of the 3 encounters. Here's some footage of one of their encounters. Being a world champion would lead him into parts in movies and television. His first really big break was when he would play Colt, the American who would fight Bruce Lee in Way of the Dragon, aka Return of the Dragon.
He will be the one who will personally take care of Tang Lung.
Yes, boss. Who can do karate better than the Japanese?
To this day, the epic battle between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris in Way of the Dragon in the Roman Colosseum is still my favorite fight scene of all time. Chuck would do another part in another small movie, and then he would have Breaker, which is catching up on the martial arts and the CB trucker craze. Here he is in a documentary called The Warrior Within.
In Japan, you have strictly a Japanese system. In Korea, you have strictly a Korean system. In China, strictly a Chinese system, and they do not deviate. Well, I'm not going to burden myself saying this is the only way. If I'd have done that, I would have never won a tournament.
Uppercut, right hand, uppercut into the jaw.
If I'm going to fight a top-notch fighter, I would actually, in my mind, create fight scenes in my mind against this individual. I would see where his strong points were, or how he would attack, and how could I defend against his strong attacks. Then I would say, well, what are his weak points? What can I do to penetrate that defense? So when I got into the ring with this man, I'd fought him many, many times.
Relax. Ready?
By the mid-late 70s, if Bruce Lee was the martial arts' first big superstar, Chuck Norris was definitely the martial arts' second big superstar. When Good Guys Wear Black came out, I couldn't wait to get to the theater. I went to the Fox Theater in Spokane, Washington to see it, just to see Chuck Norris on film. I contend that this was his big breakout role that would make him a star.
What are you doing with that gun?
Listen, Al. Somebody got into that computer, and this letter proves it.
The letter, Murray. Come on, come on, come on.
Get the litter. I'll cover you.
Okay, watch out.
In A Force of One, Bill Wallace would co-star as the main villain. And on the big screen, we got to see two middleweight world champions. From the Point era, Chuck Norris, and from the kickboxing or full contact era, Bill Superfoot Wallace. Often people will say Enter the Ninja or Revenge of the Ninja is what started the ninja movie craze. It's really the Octagon that starts that craze. And you can see that popularity because the other one, Revenge of the Ninja, comes afterwards. And this movie had better fight scenes and overall better martial artists in it throughout the cast and a better plot. And so Chuck Norris will start really the ninja craze of movies, even though he's not really recognized or known for that. Well, this is where I want to take a quick pause before I go from the Octagon to an eye for an eye. Because there's three people I'm going to be bringing up throughout this series. And the first one here is my old friend, Brad Berkeland. Why do I want to bring him up? Well, it was in between these two movies, if my memory serves me correctly, that I would meet Brad. And Brad and I were talking, and he discovered I was in the martial arts. He had boxed a little, and we were from the same type of neighborhood, meaning we were what was known as the East Side. He was up on the hill a little bit, and I was in the underhill type area. Well, in any case, I said, well, why don't you come to my karate school? At the time, I was studying Ishiru at the Salvation Army. He would come and watch, and while Ishiru wasn't quite for him, I said, well, no, he would go on and study Taekwondo from Tanavanik. Tanavanik would leave to go to California. Brad eventually would tell me, I think, Oregon, and then back to Thailand. And so Brad Young became one of the head instructors there, as well as Brad Berkeland, my friend here, would start teaching classes there just within a couple years. He would be teaching at the Taekwondo Center. And he was a terrific martial artist, Brad was, and still is. And we used to play spar, read books, and go to the movies, and we would go see anything Chuck Norris. I mean, anything and everything Chuck Norris. And Eye for an Eye, when it came out, I remember going and seeing that movie several times with Brad, as well as other friends. And it was just a fun movie to watch at the time. And I got to see another actor I really liked in it. That was Christopher Lee. He has a minor role, actually, but he's in there as the main villain. And Lone Wolf McQuade came out. This is another movie I actually saw with Brad at the Fox Theater, I believe, or we saw it at when this movie came out as well with David Carradine. And then here is Force Vengeance, one of the fight scenes. It's interesting if you read Norris's first biography, The Secret to My Success, you'll see he didn't like making this movie and wish he hadn't made it. It's quite interesting how he talks about this movie and that he didn't like it and did not like the experience. I want to talk about Code of Silence real quick because this, out of Chuck Norris's movies, many have considered this his best acting performance and his best all-around movie. And it's hard to disagree, though there's very little fight scenes. It is a really good movie directed by Andrew Davis, who would go on to direct Above the Law, Under Siege, and The Fugitive with Harrison Ford. It is an all-around terrific movie. And a lot of people may not know, Chuck Norris was even instrumental in helping Jean-Claude get his start. And he was known to do that for a lot of people, help them get them starts into the film industry or the martial arts industry or both. Chuck Norris was such an icon of the martial arts and the pop world that he even would be selling Century's kicking jeans in Black Belt magazine. This, I also want to bring up that Chuck Norris would start in the mid-late 80s taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're already a movie star, a world champion, and yet you are pursuing excellence in the martial arts by adding to your ground game, even though he also was a black belt in judo. Just a phenomenal example for all. And here's another moment in time. In about 1990, 91, a friend of mine I had known since I was, I think, 12, Jerry Noah, who was not in the martial arts, but he was stationed in the Philippines. He was, at the time, an E4 specialist, and he won Soldier of the Year in the Philippines. And because of that, he had lunch with Chuck Norris. And here's the picture here. Jerry gave me the picture because he knew I was a Chuck Norris fan and also into the martial arts. But he got to go, if I recall correctly, all the way to Manila and have lunch with Chuck Norris because he won Soldier of the Year. It shows a lot about who Chuck Norris really is and the type of person he is to take time out to have lunch with somebody because they won Soldier of the Year. I remember when I first heard about these Chuck Norris memes and Chuck Norris jokes. I was actually in Little Rock 2001 teaching maintainers how to defend an air base. So it was an exercise. I went there on the Advon team, helped set things up, and then as these maintainers were coming in from Dyess Air Force Base, I was teaching them how to defend against what we would call OP4, or the bad guys who are going to go ahead and try to get onto that base and cause injury, havoc, and destruction. And this airman there, if I remember right, he's a senior airman, looked at me and said something about, hey, I hear you do the martial arts. Have you heard about the Chuck Norris jokes? And I said, no, I had no idea. Well, he wasn't in the martial arts at all, but it turns out these jokes on Chuck Norris, I guess, were widely popular. He told me about it. I got back home and looked up in the computer. I got back home about 2 weeks later, looked up in the computer and saw all these Chuck Norris jokes and found out they're quite a phenomenon. There's even a book, or I think at the time, on them. And it just shows the lasting impact he's had, where he has gone from this legend status to this almost mythology. But all this mythology is there for a reason. It speaks to a particular truth about a core person of who Chuck Norris is. His movies were bigger than life. There is a documentary called Chuck Norris, I think it's called Defeats Communism. And it's about how his movies and other American movies showed the people in, I believe it was Romania. I remember watching this film about 10 years ago. That, boy, look what America's like compared to the communistic world, and gave them hope. And in a way was subversive, helped bringing down communism. And so I just had to bring this tidbit. That's how I learned about these Chuck Norris jokes, that he's had this lasting impact from his movies, his martial art days, and just the personality he is that he goes out and meets people, so this legend develops around. I'd also like to bring up here Rodney. Rodney was one of my karate students. I think he started training, he first started lifting with me, and then he started training in karate. He and his son, if I recall, it's like 2020. So for about 2 years, 2019, 2020, and until I moved to Missouri, he was training with me. And he is a big Chuck Norris fan. And it was just a blast to have him in there. He still sends me on the phone, even though he lives in Texas and I'm in Missouri, Chuck Norris jokes. And he had such a high admiration for Chuck Norris. Rodney had started when he started out studying Ishinru. Then he started studying under me a few years later. But he's just, and Rodney has this character. He goes out and he'll help anybody. So he kind of has this Chuck Norris part about him where if you need help, Rodney's the type of guy who'll go out and help you. And he looked at Chuck Norris as one of his heroes. And so it just speaks a lot about Chuck Norris and how much of his personality, while the film, you're seeing a film, and the magazines are portraying an aspect of the person, but his personality just seems to get beyond that and still touch everybody's life. Hence, I want to show this clip that this person had on YouTube. I don't know the person, but I think it really speaks to the character. Everybody I've known who's met Chuck Norris, and if you ever get to meet him, you'll find the same. He makes, even if it's just for a few seconds, he makes it seem like he's known you forever or he's been your friend forever and he's glad to meet you. And so I wanted to show this quick clip.
90s, he had a movie called Sidekicks, and during that movie he did a 21 city tour over 22 days where he'd go to a city and he would go to movie theaters, sign autographs, get in a plane, go somewhere else. Well, he came to Sacramento on the last day of the tour, and I think he had one day in between. This is like day 22, and I was proud and honored to be able to host him and to do some security work for him that night. And so I asked his agent, can he come to the karate school and kind of meet my students before we go to the theaters? And he said yes. So I thought about 50 people would show up. 500 people showed up. The building was surrounded. No time to sign autographs, no time to take pictures. 500 people go through the line, shake his hand. My wife was person number 132 in the list. And she goes, hi, my name's Angelina. I'm Dave's wife. Now it's time to go to the theaters. My brother has got an SUV with a bunch of black belts that are going to be doing security, and I get to ride in a limo with Chuck Norris. How cool is that? I slink in the limo and I sit down, and he looks at me and he says, so Dave, can your wife Angelina join us? He remembered her name. He just met 500 people. But what the killer was, at the end of the evening, he'd been doing this for 21 or 22 days, right? I say goodbye to him. He hops in a limo, and I see the backup lights going in the limo, and he backs up to where my guys are helping take down barriers at the last movie theater, and he pokes his head out the window. There's another guy named Dave, and goes, hey, Dave, hey, Mark, hey, Ken, hey, Bob, hey, Tim. Thanks for helping. That was great fun. And he drives off. And it was amazing to see the character he had and the way he made everybody feel, and that was something I've never forgotten. I tried to pass that on with others. Thanks, Chuck Norris. Follow me for more content.
And I want to show this because this leads me into another discussion. As you'll see pictured here, Chuck Norris is with Don Wilson. And I was having dinner with Don Wilson. This was in 2013. No, summer 2014 in Fort Worth. And everybody was coming up wanting their picture with Don Wilson. And I think it's okay to get pictures of martial artists and superstars or athletes or whatever, but I think there's an appropriate time. And so I'm kind of old school. I don't think the time to do it is in sacred spaces, for an example, during church, or if you're, another place of worship. I don't think it's particularly during the middle of training. You get it before or after training at a dojo. And I don't think you get it at the dinner table, meaning if you're at a restaurant and you see someone you really like and you're enamored with, that's happened to me in the martial world. I've seen people like, oh boy, I've always loved that martial artist, but I don't go disturb them when they're at a table and they're amongst, especially by, well, it doesn't matter whether they're alone or especially with people. I just think the table in a way is kind of a sacred space. That's something that you allow people to be on their own. And that means you never get to shake their hand, get their picture, or talk to them. That means you never get to shake their hand, get a picture, or talk to them. It's just the way it is. So I'm sitting there with Don Wilson. I'm also with one of my karate instructors, my Goju instructor, Dan Heck. And everybody's coming. So I finally just asked Don, I'm like, hey, Don, I mean, it just drives me up a wall. Doesn't it drive you up a wall? Because this dinner, which was fun, but it lasted like 6-7 hours. I'm not kidding. Just because of all these interruptions and all the other things going around. And he says, Ken, this is how I look at it. These people watch my movies and have provided me and my family a livelihood. But he said, my biggest example on how to treat people has been Chuck Norris. If Chuck Norris is a multi-millionaire and who's probably one of the most legendary martial artists ever, can take the time out to shake people's hands and make their day, definitely I can. That's the power of Chuck Norris. He's had this profound effect, not only on us, but other top-notch martial artists and action stars. And that is because of the way he treats people, the way he's trained. He just gains everybody's respect. Chuck Norris, even well into his mid-80s now, is still practicing, traveling, speaking to people. He is a perfect example on how to live your life, treating people with respect, keeping in shape, and being dedicated to his community and his family and friends. To everything he's given to me and others, many of whom will never get a chance to meet him. Thank you, Chuck Norris.